we are talking Behind You. This one is written and directed by the team of Andrew Meacham and Matthew Wadden, who are doing their first time directorial debut here in a feature-length project. And it's essentially a somewhat kind of standard haunted house slash possession movie. What is the story? Well, it focuses mainly on these two young sisters, one who is kind of maybe early kind of teens, the other one is maybe 8 or 9, around that kind of age. And their mother has passed away, so they are given to the care of their auntie, someone of whom they really don't have much contact with and is very kind of estranged. And the auntie lives in this large kind of gothic manor house which houses a secret. This secret being there is a demonic entity that dwells there, particularly trying to influence people from behind mirrors. The auntie also has this kind of boyfriend that's been with her for many, many years, and as the movie progresses, we unlearn the secret, what is the demonic entity after. It does seem to take a particular interest in the youngest of the sisters. So, let's talk about what I think works in this film. For a feature-length directorial debut, I have to say I was quite impressed with the confidence of the direction here. It does seem like, you wouldn't know this was a first-time feature. It does have a certain level of confidence, I think, behind the kind of the direction here, and is, has a sure and steady hand through the movie. It's actually kind of has a reasonable production value, or at least it kind of comes across like that. This location of this particular kind of mansion doing a lot of the kind of heavy lifting really here to really give you this kind of like spooky and kind of gothic atmosphere. I think the casting is very good here because the actors do actually look like they are related. The two sisters actually genuinely look like they could be siblings, and the aunt as well, again, looks like they may well could be related. So some good casting in regards to believability and kind of, familial relationships. And to go along with that, I actually have to say, I think the acting here was all relatively kind of solid. I mean, there are some issues over the script, which we'll come on to, but I don't think it's necessarily the fault of the actors here. I thought they did all a kind of a fine job. The movie has a couple of kind of moderately kind of creepy moments, and we kind of get the a couple of neat glimpses of a kind of demonic entity, which kind of will remind you of a Conjuring-esque kind of style creature that I think you, if you're a fan of those kind of movies, you may well appreciate. The movie is relatively kind of well paced and kind of somewhat kind of easy to follow, and it's one of these films that I think is pretty much a kind of standard haunted house film. It's not a film that is going to blow you away, but I think it is entertaining and doesn't kind of require, you pay kind of 100% full attention all the time. It's kind of very kind of, typical in what the kind of the story beats are. The characters are exactly kind of like you think they're going to be, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword because it does make for a somewhat kind of easy watch, but at the same time, it's really kind of not stretching itself. So let's kind of like transition to maybe what doesn't work, and just to kind of build on that, the movie is just very, very generic. I don't think it's a badly made movie in any sense of the word. However, it is just standard fare. Our somewhat, for example, antagonistic aunt, we know that she's going to have a heart of gold when it kind of comes down to it. We know that she's really a good person. Things like this, we have all those kind of tropes where she's very kind of offish, for example, but that she really does have feelings for her two nieces. Things like this, and it goes through all the kind of the typical things that just wouldn't happen in real life. It's like typical kind of horror movie kind of cliches. For example, our older daughter sees very clearly a supernatural occurrence that happens, and yet she more or less just goes to sleep afterwards and kind of doesn't really kind of mention it to anyone. When if you were to see this and what actually happens, you would be out of that house and screaming the house down, things like this. And the other inconsistencies as well, like we learn that this kind of demonic entity communicates through mirrors, and we are guessing that the auntie is like wallpapered over one, but why not just take the mirror out or destroy it? And there's also kind of like a bunch of mirrors in the kind of the basement, things like this. It's like, we could have set these rules up, but we just have all these things that you know, if someone really genuinely believed there was a demonic entity that communicated through mirrors, you simply wouldn't have mirrors in the house, would you? And you certainly wouldn't bother just papering over one when you could just remove the mirror. It just seems like a little silly. You know, you could even argue maybe why did they move out? Why doesn't the auntie move out of this house? I mean, I'll give them that one because they do have a line of dialogue that says the auntie is there to try and kind of find a way to try and combat it. But it is just kind of one line. We don't really know how she's kind of like trying to combat it. She's just kind of reading a bunch of books. We also don't really know why the demon has attached itself to this kind of family. It all seems kind of very just, it's there for plot convenience's sake. As a story could go, as I've mentioned, it's not a bad film, but it's just kind of very generic. And as I said, the acting was fairly good, but there are some of the way the characters are written here seem kind of somewhat kind of stifled and more, you know, going into somewhat caricatures and typical kind of like dialogue sequences that just don't seem a little bit, you know, they seem a little bit kind of unnatural at times. I don't blame the actors for this one. It just sometimes the dialogue here just seems a little stiff. And obviously, again, we're having, you know, relatively kind of inexperienced writer-directors here. So we're kind of we're churning out some kind of like somewhat generic stuff. You know, we have a twist in the movie, but we know that there's going to be kind of more to it after that. It's very much a standard fare. You can watch this one, you know, you'll enjoy it, but you'll never want to watch it again. You kind of like, it will just fade out of memory within the kind of like, probably, you know, within the next month. But it's not a bad watch for the time you're watching it. If you like kind of movies like The Conjuring, the Insidious franchise, this one is a kind of a light version of that. It isn't particularly scary. I don't think there's any real genuine kind of like standout moments that are spooky or scary. It's all just a little bit muted, all just a little bit vanilla and generic, but not bad. It's worth a watch if you kind of like relatively well produced, but ultimately somewhat kind of mediocre haunted house movies. I'll give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.